Canon is calling their new 1.4 L mount primes hybrid primes. And I've been consuming a lot of content about them lately. I do have perspective on these in a way that I don't think a whole lot of people know about, and that is the 35 millimeter 1.4. I had an early release, pre-release, I should say, copy of that lens. I have a contact that got me one of those lenses. Says, hey, go out and shoot with it, but don't let anybody know that you have it. And I said, okay, that's fine. So I went out and I shot some real estate with it, the 35 1.4. Now, I probably would not have realized this right away had it already been released, and so all the correction profiles and such within the Adobe suite were on board. But when I shot with it, none of those things existed, which means you saw the 1.435 in all of its glory. And let me tell you, its glory is extraordinarily distorted. Shockingly distorted for a 35 millimeter focal length, which those are typically pretty well corrected and distortion free. So I didn't really notice much vignetting. I didn't have it for that long. I kind of chucked it like a nuclear hot potato back, saying, hey, I can't use this thing, man. It's bendy as all get out. So I wanted to give a little bit of that perspective to what I feel about is most likely going to be the case with the 24 and the 50 as well. And I don't mean to pick on Canon here, because this is something that happens to be rampant industry-wide, and that is the companies nowadays, the camera manufacturers, are developing lenses with the important criteria to them being that they are small and light and affordable, because those are the things that sell lenses. However, if you were to take a look at some of the older, in Canon's case, EF mount lenses, a lot of those came from a time where these in-camera corrections and the software corrections for this distortion and vignetting and such, that wasn't a thing. And so they actually had to be more optically sound. And like I said, this isn't just a Canon thing, nor am I picking on Canon for it. So I'll pick on somebody that nobody ever picks on, Hasselblad. So with Hasselblad's new medium format lenses, the new XCD lenses, is that what they're called? Yeah, the XCD lenses, they're small, and so the 55 millimeter in particular, I've seen MTF charts for that versus some of the older XCD lenses, and they aren't as good. They aren't as good out to the corners. They aren't nearly as sharp, and the reason for that is because of what we're saying. It's because they're, even a company like Hasselblad, who that should be the highest quality imaging that you can really buy outside of someone like Phase One, right? Even a company like Hasselblad, could be that they're owned by DJI now, is prioritizing these light, small lenses and then mathematically correcting them within the camera body or within the editing suite. So it's not just Canon, it's everybody that's doing this. But the interesting byproduct of that is I'm taking a look at older lenses. I like these better. So going back to Canon here and picking on them a little bit more. There are two types of people I think that these lenses are not going to be right for. And the first type of customer, of user, these prime lenses are not going to be right for, are ones that are using them on non-native Canon bodies. And so the time that I had that 35 1.4, I hadn't mounted it to, but I did at the time own a Red Komodo X. Now, a Red Komodo X doesn't have any of the Canon correction stuff available. You're going to get that lens in all of its glory. And in fact, a buddy of mine, Carlos Quintero, you should check out his channel. he got a copy of the 35 pretty early on. I remember he made a video, I think it was on the Komodo, kind of showing this too. You know, that these things are all distorted and such. Now, I don't know if the 50 is going to be as bad, but I would assume that the 24, being that it's a much wider angle of view, is going to be even worse than the 35 at that. So that's the first category of people that are not going to be particularly well suited for these new Canon hybrid primes, are the people using them on non-native bodies. The second category of people, and going back to the Hasselblad thing, are going to be people who require the utmost image quality and sharpness across the frame, all the way, corner to corner, edge to edge sharpness. Those people are not going to be the best for these lenses either, because even though I have zero doubt that it is a fine optic, because technology keeps progressing and the coatings keep getting better and so on and so forth, that you have to correct that much at the edges, that will make the sharpness nosedive. And even with the corrections on board, I mean, there's no free lunch here. So lens design is always a system of compromises, and that's a compromise they're going to make for it to be light and small and affordable. You may remember a few months back, Gerald Undone did, I guess several months back now, Gerald Undone did a review on an RE, a 35 millimeter RE Master Uber Supreme Prime, whatever it is, all the adjectives, right? One of their high-end cine lenses, I believe still produced for them by Zeiss. And the thing was massive. I mean, it's a giant lens, especially for a 35. And part of Gerald's video is he went into an RE facility where they were testing the lens with different tools and such with him. And it was either Gerald or it was RE who said, and I remember this, they say, the reason this thing is so big is because that's the size it needs to be optically correct, right? To be able to control those distortions, to be able to give it sharpness all the way across the field, for it to have, no or very little chromatic aberration or coma, or, it's all these things that are typically trade-offs in lens design. When you get to the point of a, $30,000-$40,000 prime lens, cine lens, it's giant. And so that kind of shows you something right there, because obviously people are not going to be able to afford, or even it makes sense for, to buy a 35 millimeter RE, all the adjectives prime, to put on their Canon camera. I know it may seem like I'm throwing shade at these newer Canon lenses. That's really not what I'm intending to do. This isn't throwing shade at Canon or anybody else. This is just basically pointing out that I've seen a lot of very positive content about these lenses out there. I have a personal experience with one of them that differs a little bit from a lot of the content I've been seeing. And I think people should be informed about what it is that they're buying. If you're not one of the people that fits in those two categories that I brought up, of people who will not be particularly well served by this lens, it's probably going to be great for you. It's probably going to be great for the majority of shooters out there. I still might buy one or two. But I'm going to do it both eyes wide open, knowing that the older EF mount lenses often are better optically than some of the newer ones that Canon's releasing. That may be a hot take, but that's the way I see it.